My name is Amanda. I'm 26, and this is the story of how I slept with my boss after what he promised me. It's a story I wish I didn't have to tell, but one I need to share. I worked for a huge company in the middle of a busy American city. My life was pretty simple. I liked my quiet routine, my neat and tidy apartment, and keeping to myself. I didn't need a lot of excitement. At work, I just kept my head down, did my job well, and looked forward to going home to a peaceful evening. I liked things to be calm and predictable. My boss was Mark. He was 35, always in these sharp, expensive-looking suits. He was usually very serious, all business, all the time. But sometimes, he'd give me this smile that felt different. I didn't know what to make of it, so I tried to ignore it. I just wanted to do my work and be left alone. But then, things started to change. Mark began finding all sorts of reasons to come by my desk. He'd ask about a report or an email, but it felt like those weren't the real reasons. I could feel him watching me. It made my skin crawl. I'd try to focus on my computer screen, but I could feel his eyes on me, and my hands would get cold. One afternoon, he stood over my desk and said, "Amanda, you work so hard. You deserve more for all this." I just said, "Thank you," but a knot of nervousness tightened in my stomach. What did he mean, I deserved more? A week later, he called me into his office. My heart was pounding, thinking I'd messed up. But he smiled and said he wanted to talk about a raise. I felt a wave of relief and happiness. I worked hard, and a little extra money would really help. He leaned in and said I was one of his best employees. But then his expression softened in a way that didn't feel professional. He looked at me and said, "Maybe we can discuss the details over dinner." My mind went blank. Dinner? With my boss? This wasn't what I expected. I felt confused and pressured. He was my boss, and this was about my salary, so I reluctantly nodded yes. The dinner was at a fancy seafood restaurant by the water. Mark was already there, wearing a casual button-down instead of his suit. "You look beautiful tonight, Amanda," he said, and I felt my cheeks get hot. At first, we talked about work, but then he started asking personal questions about my dreams, my life outside the office. He told me he was lonely, that he had no time for a personal life. Part of me felt special, like he was confiding in me. After dinner, he suggested we get a drink. One drink turned into 2, then 3. I let my guard down. We were laughing, and then he reached over and held my hand. A little voice in my head screamed that this was wrong, but I didn't pull away. I was nervous, a little dizzy from the drinks, and unsure of everything. He asked if I wanted to go back to his apartment to talk more. I knew I shouldn't, but I said yes. His place was a sleek, modern high-rise. I told myself we were just going to talk. But he sat close to me on the couch, held my hand, and then he kissed me. My mind was cloudy. I didn't stop him. I slept with my boss that night. The next morning, he woke up smiling and said, "Don't worry, Amanda. I'll take care of you." I wanted so badly to believe him. I hoped this meant he really cared about me. But back at the office, everything was different. He acted like nothing had happened. Days turned into weeks, and he never mentioned the raise. When I finally worked up the courage to ask, he just said, "Be patient." Then, he became cold. He stopped talking to me, avoided me in the hallways. It was like I was a stranger. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. He had used me. All those promises were empty. I was so angry and hurt. I marched into his office, my hands shaking, and confronted him. "You promised me a raise," I said. He looked at me with this cold, annoyed expression and said, "Amanda, it's unprofessional to mix personal matters with work." I couldn't believe it. He was the one who said it. He was the one who invited me to dinner. He stood up, tall and intimidating, and said, "This conversation is over. Go back to your desk." I walked out of his office feeling completely shattered. My trust was broken into a million pieces. After that, I couldn't focus. The office felt toxic. People were whispering. I'd hear my name and Mark's name in the same breath. I felt everyone's judging eyes on me. Then, I got a call from HR. Sitting in that room with the HR manager, I had a choice: stay silent or tell the truth. I took a deep breath and told her everything: the dinner, the promises, the night at his apartment, his cruel dismissal. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The company investigated. They found texts he'd sent me, which backed up my story. Mark was fired. But my relief was short-lived. I lost everything, too. My coworkers treated me like I was the problem. They said I got Mark fired. The gossip was brutal. A few days later, I was called in and given a termination letter. They said my presence was damaging to the company's reputation. I was devastated. I packed my things alone, with no goodbyes, and went home to my apartment and cried for hours. For a whole month, I felt lost. I was angry at Mark, but I was also so angry at myself. Why did I believe him? Why did I let it happen? But I promised myself I would learn from this. I would be stronger. I kept applying for jobs, and finally, I got one. A fresh start at a smaller, friendlier company. My new boss, Mrs. Evans, was kind and respectful. She talked about my work, not my personal life. I felt safe. I worked hard, and she valued my effort. For the first time, I felt truly appreciated for my skills, not for anything else. That horrible experience taught me the most important lesson: my own self-respect is everything. I learned to trust my gut, to say no when something feels wrong. I learned that I am strong enough to take care of myself. Now, my life is quiet and happy again. Sometimes I'll walk past my old office building, and the memories come back. But they don't hurt anymore. They just remind me of how far I've come. I'm not that same naive girl, waiting for someone else to make things better. I'm a woman who knows her own worth, and I make my own life better. And that is the most important lesson of all.